The Speaker recognizes Representative Barnett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to amend Senate Bill 288 to protect Michigan's endangered bird species from extinction. Almost 100 years ago, we failed to protect the passenger pigeon, and the last passenger pigeon died in 1914 while in residence at the Cincinnati Zoo. That last wild passenger pigeon, the last wild passenger pigeon, was shot in the year 1900 in Ohio. The Cincinnati Zoo's passenger pigeon in 1914, also known as Martha, named after Martha Washington, was the only presumed last alive of her kind before the species was deemed to be extinct. Not a single passenger pigeon has been seen since that sad day of September 1, 1914. Just imagine for a moment looking at the last member of an entire species. In many ways, Martha's saga has been the fate of other wildlife species throughout the world, but with human intervention, we have been able to prevent the loss of more wildlife. And that is why I rise today and ask my colleagues to join me so that we don't lose birds like the Carolina parakeet, who died a few years after Martha, the ivory-billed woodpecker, Bachman's warbler, the heath hen, and the dusky seaside sparrow. Mr. Speaker, my amendment will protect Michigan's precious and endangered songbirds. Number one on the list is the American robin, our state bird. No more really needs to be said about that. Number two is the cardinal, one of the first birds our children learn to recognize in their backyards in the spring. Number three is a very special bird to me, the Kirtland's warbler. While it's not our state bird, many people believe it should be. It migrates to the Bahamas every winter, like many of us wish we could do. And especially this winter, we were hoping that we could do that because it was considerably longer and colder than normal. And after the winter leaves, the Kirtland's warbler chooses to return to Michigan. And with few exceptions, it returns nowhere else. And it is here that they make their summer nests. I would also like to mention that they do this without a single tax break or incentive thrown their way. They just come and they like the state of Michigan. But that's not to say there are millions of them here. Mr. Speaker, last year's census counted only 1,773 singing males among the jack pine forests of the northern Lower Peninsula. Kirtland's warblers are protected under the Endangered Species Act, and with the assistance and cooperation of several agencies, that bird is recovered from a population of only a couple hundred pairs in the 1980s. Then we get to the trumpeter swan. The numbers of trumpeter swans has diminished so greatly that the Department of Natural Resources and Environment is asking people to report any observations of trumpeter swans for a continent-wide census that the DNRE is participating in to determine the population size and distribution of these beautiful birds. The trumpeter swan's recovery represents another success in endangered species recovery. Historically, trumpeter swans nested in the wetlands across much of the continental United States, including Michigan. By 1885, unregulated shooting and wetland destructions had nearly eliminated the population from the state. By 1900, the species was considered extinct. Decades later, two previously unknown populations were discovered in the Rocky Mountains in Alaska. I mention this because the efforts to restore the species in Michigan began in the late 1980s, and in 1989, 1990, and 1991, trumpeter swan eggs were collected from pairs maintained by zoos and from wild pairs in Alaska, and the eggs were hatched and the young were reared in captivity for 2 years at Michigan State University's Kellogg Biological Station. Initial releases in Michigan occurred at the Seney National Wildlife Refuge, the Rifle River Recreation Area, and MSU Kellogg Bird Sanctuary. In 1992, the birds began to nest successfully and rear offspring, representing the first natural reproduction of a species in Michigan in more than a century. In 2004, 655 trumpeter swans were counted during the late summer survey. And finally, the sandhill crane. Their numbers were much reduced by habitat loss and shooting in the early part of the century, but they have grown in recent decades. A 2-year study founded by the Non-Game Wildlife Fund confirmed 805 breeding pairs statewide. Most breeding pair in the Lower Peninsula are found in a 6-county area near Jackson and Ann Arbor. And while my colleagues in this room have told me that they're quite tasty, I believe they should be added to this list so that we can protect them for future generations of Michiganders. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the time today and want to point out that these success stories represent a great legacy that we can leave to succeeding generations. Let's raise our voices together today and sing the praises of our great state songbirds. Please join me by protecting them so their songs may continue to be heard across our beautiful and diverse state. Mr. Speaker, I ask for a record roll call. Thank you.
Representative Barnett has requested a record roll call vote. Is the demand supported? The demand is not supported. The question before the House is on the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. Members may vote at their desk. The amendment is not adopted.